Okay, hello. All right, so part two. Okay, the next part, the next pathway is this catalytic enzyme receptor pathway. Okay, so enzymes are catalysts. Okay, receptor receives signals. Okay, you can have them as two separate parts, but it's easier to have them together. So you have one thing where you have one end with the receptor, and the other end is enzyme activity. Okay, so okay, so this is the most famous example is called tyrosine kinase. Okay, a tyrosine kinase, the way it works is you have one end that's a receptor end. Okay, the receptor can bind the ligand. Once the receptor binds the ligand, um, the tyrosine kinase on the cytoplasmic side, okay, um, starts to work. Okay, the reality is like it brings kind of the two sides when the receptor binds the receptor, or sorry, when the receptor binds the ligand, it takes these two sides, brings them closer to each other so they touch. And when they touch, the two ends of the phosphokinase enzyme actually meet, and now the kinase actually works. Okay, and so now the active site works, and so it uses ATP to turn on all these proteins, and then the signal occurs downstream of that. Okay. All right. So we'll skip the integrins. Okay, and receptors. Okay. Um, okay. So 6.3 novel receptor, novel signal molecules. Okay, so calcium is a very important intracellular messenger inside the cell. Okay, and this is especially true in muscles and in nerves. Okay, you get an electrical signal, you open this voltage gated calcium channel. Okay, the calcium channel runs into the cell. Okay, the calcium runs into the cell, and then the calcium bind to proteins, um, especially calmodulin. Calmodulin is exactly what it sounds like. Okay. Okay. Calmodulin, using calcium to modulate other proteins. Okay. That's how you came up with calmodulin. Okay. Calmodulin, what it does, it binds to proteins and activates them after getting a calcium signal. Okay. So basically, when you have calcium release, the calcium release, okay, causes calmodulin to activate. Calmodulin changes the protein activity of whatever downstream of it. And then once the calcium signal is gone, calmodulin goes silent again, and then the protein activity reverts back to normal. Okay. Okay. Gases are short-term acting molecules. Okay, the best known is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, it gets made and used right away. So it is synthesized by nitric oxide synthetase, and that diffuses into smooth muscle and causes vasodilation. Um, and this is where this is used is actually in the inflammatory response. The inflammatory response, you need your capillaries to dilate and open. And so locally, you just make nitric oxide. The nitric oxide works on the nearby smooth muscle and dilates the capillaries, and that causes increased blood flow. Okay. It can also work as a neurotransmitter. Um, carbon monoxide is also a smooth muscle activator, but in very, very, very low doses. High doses of carbon monoxide kill you. Okay, hydrogen sulfide is helps the cardiovascular system to relax blood vessels. And garlic is a major dietary source of this. Which is why, like, they tell you garlic is good for your heart or something like that. Okay, that's where the good for your heart part comes from. Okay, the sinusoids are derived from arachidonic acid. These arachidonic acid cascades really control certain pathways, including the pain pathways that are modulated by aspirin and acetaminophen. Like they affect this pathway and they suppress this pathway, which is why you feel less pain. Okay. You don't have to know about leukotriene, prostaglandins, or sphingolipids. Okay. So this is the acid pathway. It goes through COX-1, COX-2. How aspirin works is it works on COX-2. Okay, it inhibits COX-2, so you stop the swelling with the prostaglandins and stuff like that. That's the anti-inflammatory effect. Okay. All right. Okay. Receptor agonist and antagonist. This is incredibly important. It definitely will be on your test. Okay. So the primary ligand activates the receptor that generates a response. This is normal. Okay. There are certain drugs that work as agonists. They also activate the receptor. Okay, to generate a response. The antagonist blocks the receptor activity and there is no response. Okay, so let me give you examples of each one. Okay, the first one is morphine. Okay, morphine binds to, you have endorphin receptors. Okay, morphine is an agonist to the endorphin receptor. So it binds to the endorphin receptor and causes the response, the happy feeling response. Okay, antagonist blocks the receptor activity. Okay, so there is a morning after pill, or for situations where you rape or regret what happened the night before. It's called morning after pill. It's actually a progesterone antagonist. Okay, it binds progesterone receptor site. Okay, it binds the progesterone receptor, blocks it from working, and therefore there's no progesterone signaling, and no progesterone signaling causes the shedding of the uterine lining, which takes care of the problem. So, like antagonists and agonists are basically a lot of drugs. That's what they target. Okay, they target a specific receptor. They either want to turn it off or turn it on, right? So. Okay, so the target response depends on the target receptor. Okay, so epinephrine can bind to different forms of the adrenergic receptor, adrenergic receptor, and the alpha receptor and beta receptors. Alpha receptors causes vasoconstriction. Beta receptors cause vasodilation. Okay. So adrenaline or epinephrine, okay, is the hormone that's released when you're getting ready to run for your life. Okay, so when you're getting ready to run for your life, you want blood to your skeletal muscles. You do not want blood to your intestines. You do not want blood to your kidneys. Okay, so um, kidneys and intestines will have the alpha receptor on them, and the alpha receptor in response to that epinephrine will constrict. So no blood will go there. Okay, epinephrine will bind to the beta 2 receptor. Okay, skeletal muscle, and the skeletal muscle will vasodilate, and therefore you get blood only going to the muscles. Okay. Okay, so you can see you can mutate receptors. If you have mutated receptors, there's signaling issues. Okay, there are toxins that affect receptors. So the pertussis toxin blocks inhibition of cyclase, so it actually keeps it active. Okay, and that leads to whooping cough. Okay, the cholera toxin binds blocks the enzyme activity of gene proteins, so the cell keeps making cyclic AMP, so you get a lot more secretion than you normally should get. Okay, the gene protein should eventually cleave the cyclic GMP, and that stops the enzyme from working. But because the cholera toxin keeps it going, the cell keeps making cyclic AMP, which causes much more fluid to be secreted. Okay, which causes massive amounts of diarrhea. All right. So let's talk about nervous regulation, tonic control, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So there's two ways to control something. So there's the tonic control, which is you can increase or decrease. Like there will be some signaling through. That signaling can go up or down. Going up will lead to a increase somehow, and going down will go decrease. But there's no way to turn. It's never on or off. It is just high or low. Okay. So the signaling continues all the way through. Okay, and then what you modulate is how fast this neuron fires. How fast this neuron fires, okay, will alter the rate of this. So if it fires slower, you get more vasodilation. If it fires faster, then you get more vasoconstriction. Okay. Antagonistic control. This thing you already learned. Think of it as your parasympathetic and sympathetic. I try to set you guys up for this when I talk about this. Okay, the big difference at the very end of the signaling is the 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 neurotransmitter is different. Okay, for a sympathetic neuron, it releases norepinephrine. For the parasympathetic neuron, it releases acetylcholine. Two different chemicals that work on the same different regions. Okay, but because they're two different chemicals, they kind of work against each other. One chemical causes a faster heartbeat. Okay, norepinephrine. One chemical causes a slower heartbeat. Okay, acetylcholine. Okay. Okay. So move forward. Okay. So you always in a reflex pathway, you always have the response will always feedback on stimulus. Okay. For now. Okay. Simple reflexes are mediated by the nervous system or endocrine system. Okay. Complex ones are mediated by both. Okay. Okay. So the neural pathways are always much more specific than the endocrine. Endocrine are always almost always global. The nature of the signal. The neural is electrical. Okay. Neural is faster. Neural is shorter. Okay. The response time. So with you guys will learn more about this later. But the neural response is very quick, but it disappears even just as quick. Okay. So for neural, every time you fire, you get one single response. Okay. For the neural pathway to get more of a response, you have to fire multiple times. Okay. Fire faster and faster and faster. Okay. And that encodes for more and more stimulus. For endocrine, you release once, you just release more. Okay, is how much you release, not how many times you release. Okay. All right. So this is a simple endocrine reflex. This is a simple neural reflex. You don't have to know the combination. Okay. Okay. So you can see the simple, the neural, but you don't have to know combinations. But you can see that they actually do work in combinations of things. Okay. Okay. Where the neuroendocrine actually works the most is the hypothalamus. Okay. Okay. All right. Hopefully that all makes sense to you guys. But make sure you're aware of the neural and the endocrine pathway and how they work. Okay. All right. End this little chapter.